Welcome to a Meji Media podcast called Life Mastery. Now, I started this podcast for a couple of reasons. Number one is a little bit selfish because I love listening to and spending time with interesting people. Number two is I want this to be a bit of a toolkit for people, young and old, to learn from people with diverse experiences. You'll hear conversations with entrepreneurs, Olympic athletes, top corporate leaders, and more. And they all have something valuable to share about what really matters in life. Along the way, I'll share some of my own experiences, the wins, the losses, the risks I've taken, and the moments of joy and tragedy. So listen with an open mind, and hopefully you'll take away something useful. Thank you and enjoy. In this episode of Life Mastery, I talk to my friend Mickey Patel. Mickey is a senior partner at a private equity fund called August Equity, where he looks to back the best UK management teams in order to create outstanding companies that compete globally. Mickey was previously a chartered accountant at PwC before joining its mergers and acquisitions division. He joined August Equity in 2009 and has since made over 50 acquisitions over his career. Self-development is a way of life for Mickey, who cites the Socrates saying, "All I know is that I know nothing," preferring to be open to new ideas and opinions. As well as his business career, Mickey is involved widely in altruistic efforts, including building sterilised cold water fountains for impoverished schools in India and supporting time and resources to charities such as I Can, You Can Too and RIFCO that help improve social inequality in the UK. Now, we talk a lot about his chosen career path and how he got there, with an interesting story how he once got kicked out of school. He also offers advice on what he thinks makes a good founder, an entrepreneur and CEO, and also dealing with imposter syndrome, which is something that a lot of people feel that they have, and much, much more. So enjoy this conversation with Mickey Patel. Now, I'd say you're someone who's got quite a unique story in that you followed a pretty straightforward corporate path, became a director at PwC, but you're also somebody who I'd consider a bit of an entrepreneur as well. Like, you now work as a partner in a well-known private equity firm. But before we kind of go on to what private equity is and what you do, like, why don't you go through a little bit of your story from, say, school, university onwards?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because I suppose it was a non-standard way of doing it. I got expelled from my private school when I was 9 years old. And I was
didn't know that.
The black sheep of my family. Yeah, everyone knows now. My mum. Hi, everyone else. I got
Hang on, what did you get expelled for at 9 years old?
Racism and stepping up to a bully. And unfortunately, I was the one that ended up being...
So someone was racist to you and you stepped up?
Regularly, yeah. When I was growing up, I wouldn't say the school it was, but it wasn't a multicultural school. And I got expelled at 9. And I remember my parents just being like distraught, my grandparents saying distraught, I was the black sheep of the family.
That was the end of life.
That was the end of life. And then I realised I went over to Claremont High School, which was state school. I was like, I've arrived. It's like multicultural, multi-gender. And I flew. I remember I was able to be myself and around people that was from my culture, yeah, versus a hamstered private school up until 9. Maybe I got thrown out for the right reasons, because otherwise I probably would have stayed there. So that was a starting point, not feeling good enough when I was 10. And then, I suppose because at private school, you learn so much more. When you get to the year 7 at a state school, actually you're quite relaxed. You get quite confident, right? Because you've done a lot of the work, which probably year 8s and maybe even year 9s do. So I went with that level of confidence. I wasn't massively academic. I never have been massively academic. But I did better grades than I did in my private school. And then I just got around the right individuals. So, my best mates in Claremont were very, very successful individuals. And, they weren't individuals who didn't have a game plan. Like one of my mates is now a Hollywood star. Another one's a magician, but, well known in the UK. Another one's an accountant. And so I had good friends, right? And then when it came to, GCSEs, I remember when, I thought I would probably fail a lot of them because I didn't really know exams. I didn't really know how the exam techniques work. I did all right. I did okay. And obviously I went to A levels and I loved economics and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember that. And so I ended up doing economics, geography and biology. It's like, what the hell do you want to do type of thing? Everyone was telling me to do maths. I didn't want to do maths. But I got pretty good grades and then went to university.
Was it UCL you went to?
No, I went to Royal Holloway, which, was I actually was supposed to go to UCL, but I didn't get that one grade. It was actually 2 marks away. It wasn't even 1%. 2 marks away, didn't get that grade. I went to Royal Holloway, came out with the first in economics. And then I still didn't know what I wanted to do at kind of 21. So I spoke with my grandfather, who's a guru for me. And I said, remember that was the time when we had the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah.
We had the tech bubble was bursting. So, I could have done trading, I could have done consultancy, I could have done investment banking. And my granddad just said, look, just do accountancy. My dad did accountancy, he did accountancy, a lot of other ones did accountancy. So it was kind of the safe bet. And that's when I went into sort of PricewaterhouseCoopers and, that's the start of my career really.
And the thing is, for a lot of young people, like especially getting to that age where they're going to graduate, getting into one of those top 4 firms is like the dream. Like, you said you arrived when you arrived at that high school, but for them, that is arriving, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose so. I mean, I didn't think, and I think this comes down to belief, isn't it? I didn't think when I was in university that I was capable enough to get to a big 4, accountancy firm. When I look back now, I was like, well, that's exactly where you should have gone. And I think if I had role models that helped me, I suppose, both in my family, but also around me that said, actually, you're the type of individual that can go into that place, so go with a bit of confidence. I would have had a different view on that. But I think sometimes, if you don't believe you can get into something, you push yourself even more. Do you know what I mean? And I think that was what drove me across the whole, to get, a good outcome in my degree.
So having that element of imposter syndrome when you arrive.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Imposter syndrome or, I'm not good enough to get there. And then every time you do it, you're like, oh shit, I did it, right? So I think that does drive people. And I think highly ambitious individuals, definitely say I'm an ambitious individual, as you are. I think they are driven by the fear of not succeeding and not, delivering something which is more difficult and attainable. And
when you get into PwC, you're around, I'm assuming, a lot of like-minded individuals who are also very highly ambitious, want to climb that corporate ladder. How did you feel at that time being there? And secondly, how did you navigate yourself through that?
So there was 2 parts to Pricewaterhouse. So I started off at the banking capital markets audit part. And, doing the audit job is, it's an interesting one because you're going into I went into Goldman Sachs, I went to JP Morgan, I went to Barclays, I went to Lloyd's, and you're auditing their work. Some people can say that's quite, sedentary and it's not that creative and not that exciting. But I learned a lot of transferable skills. I learned sort of team working skills, numerical skills, analytical, all that stuff, which helped me in my next role. But there was a lot of smart people around the table. The graduates, Imperial, Oxford, Cambridge, they were very, very smart individuals. And you were competing every day from, a different crop. So the other things that came out of those first 2.5 years with PwC was my love of now theatre and, fine dining and fine wine and, this whole culture, which was alien to a guy that grew up in Kingsbury in northwest London, you know what I mean? So I didn't grow just as, I suppose, a career into PwC. I grew as an individual, more culturally.
And you mentioned that it was competitive. Were your peers competitive amongst each other?
100%. I mean, when you're in PricewaterhouseCoopers, they say that, firstly, there's a model where they will every year they would graduate, but they would get 1,000 graduates, and roughly about 30% of them will go in the first 12 to 18 months because they don't get past the exams. That's the first bit. Second bit, they'll decide the worst of the bunch won't get forward and won't get promoted to manager, which means those guys will go. And so it's very, very competitive. I actually went to an even more competitive part of PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was corporate finance, which was in their mergers and acquisitions division, which was even more competitive. So, that's to do with advising companies on how to buy other businesses, or if they wanted to exit their business, or if they wanted to raise funds. And I really loved, that was really, really interesting stuff. A lot of the people that did that job ended up in private equity, or, they went into a company as their M&A director, or they went in as a CFO in another company. So it was actually quite a good springboard. And you're around, in PricewaterhouseCoopers, you're around some of the best, I think, in the UK, learning from the best.
I suppose for PricewaterhouseCoopers, I mean, the model's great, isn't it? You keep keeping people on their toes throughout.
Yeah.
Making them compete for their jobs almost every single year to get to that next point, and you're giving them that little taste of what it is.
Yeah.
To say that if you do a little bit more here and work a little bit harder for the company, then you can get to this next level. And it kind of feels like that kind of environment. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a meritocracy, and not everyone can make it. And I think that's the thing I'd certainly learned in business, and even in private equity now, where I'm at, is not everyone is going to be there at the end. And you've got to make some pretty hard decisions, both about yourself and your own skills, and also other people's skills that we back in our businesses. I think for a long time, the UK as well, aside from the US, which is really good at this, they tend to allow people in a position where actually it might not be good for the individual and also for the business. I've learned over a period of time is that you save people in jobs if you just have a conversation and say, look, you're better off over here versus here. And I think that's to yourself as well. You don't have to be a jack of all trades. I thought when I was, a 21-year-old kid, I had to be good at everything. Actually, I realized I'm not good at everything. And actually there's individual things that I'm really good at, focus on that. Leadership, entrepreneurialism, teamwork and commerciality. And there's other stuff which I'm not as good at. So let someone else do that.
So what were the kind of things that you discovered that you weren't so good at, and how did you discover that you weren't so good at them?
I don't love spending time in legal documents, going down all the details and understanding, every word that should be accurate. So I outsourced that to, lawyers and other colleagues that are very, very good at that. I'm very good at winning the hearts and minds of entrepreneurs, negotiating the deal, and then thinking about what the plan is going to be over 2 to 3 years, and then acquiring other businesses. And that's where I try and spend a lot of my time. Let's
explain to people, like in basic terms, what private equity is.
Yeah. So private equity, if you've watched Dragon's Den, is, that format is a bunch of individuals in front of someone that presents their business. The dragons essentially decide whether that business is a good business or not. If it's a good business, they'll give money for valuation and equity, but also give their expertise. It's the same concept for private equity. Those dragons, and we have in private equity a fund, which is populated by, pension funds and insurance funds and high net worth individuals and sovereign banks. They give us an amount of capital, and they expect within a 7 to 10 year period to make a multiple, which is usually about 2 to 3 times. August Equity's got a really good high quartile return on that. So, we've been able to raise 5 funds now, and we're raising our 6th fund. And what we essentially do is that we will, in specific areas, 4 sectors that we're focused on: technology, healthcare, education, support services. We will focus on businesses where we can grow them exponentially. So there might be a million EBITDA, £1 million of profit now in, let's say, IT services, a business called RIT that we have. And, since 2020, we've been able to acquire 11 other businesses. That business is now spread from Nottingham to Manchester to Leeds to London, Thames Valley, Midlands, and it has exponentially grown. And the staff has grown from roughly about 100 to now 400.
So you're not, like, to be clear, going in having someone from the local bakery come in and say, give us like £20,000 to help me produce more bread.
The minimum we will invest in August Equity is about 10 million quid. and the minimum EBITDA is about £1 million. So yeah, that's what we do at August Equity, and it's all about managing and backing people.
At what point was it that you realised that this is what you wanted to do?
I think it was actually in 2007 when I sold a business to August Equity, and it was the previous team there. And I really liked the guys. They were, very entrepreneurial. They focused on, at the time it was healthcare and support services. They didn't really do much technology until I went there. And I just loved the guys. They had a very different style of private equity, which was, let's start with a blank sheet of paper. What is the plan? What is an area that we want to focus down on, rather than having to have a business plan given to them and say, here you go, become a expert on burger chains. They weren't like that. They were really focused, and they wanted to create these big businesses in the UK that weren't there. So that's when I really, decided I want to be in private equity. And then 2 years later, when I got enough experience, I just knocked on their door and it just worked, so, and there you go. I'm there 15 years.
So it wasn't in the sense that you went out looking for a job necessarily. You had somebody who you had in mind already. Yeah. And you thought, I need to find that right moment where I can actually go and knock on the door with enough experience so they'll want me as well. Yeah,
it was the end of 2008. If you remember, just after Lehman's as well. So it was a difficult time for the economy, but I remember knocking on their door and saying, look, really, really interested. I see that you're looking to hire. I've done a deal with you. I know X, Y, Z. And it was kind of a warm introduction. Yeah. I don't think I've ever actually had filled out a job application before. I did the first one for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then when I went to corporate finance, I knew an individual there, which I talked to. Same with August Equity. There was a few other businesses I did actually apply to, the same as August, just to have some backup. But I always knew I wanted to go to August.
And it's a bit of a recurring theme. Like, I speak to a lot of people who say that since they graduated, they haven't really had to use their CV because things kind of fall into place. You make connections, you make contacts. So to what extent would you say like having those connections and contacts are important as you get into your
It's career? Fundamental. I mean, it's fun. If you're in any finance or business role, even, in any role really, I think networking and understanding who your core network is very, very important, right? Because at some stage you can help each other. I've seen it in business. Now 15 years being in private equity, you can imagine the number of businesses I've met, all the advisors I've met, and that's the old adage is like, make sure you're careful about on your way up, because when you come down, you'll need these individuals. So I've seen that happen as well with individuals that haven't been able to look after their advisors and their networks, and it hasn't worked well for them. So that is a big tip, actually. Look after your network.
And when we talk about networking, how would you advise people who might be introverts to go out and build that network?
Just get out there. There's so many in business. There's so many different networking sessions that you can go to, and now with LinkedIn and various other portals, you can always get yourself out there. Now, don't get yourself out there all the time. Don't be a busy fool. Clearly, qualify where you need to be to get to, and then just say hello to people, because everyone's in the same position. If you're nervous about saying hello to somebody, trust me, they will probably be as well. So just ask the question.
When I started the conversation off with you, I said that it's a bit of a unique position being in private equity, because there's a lot of attributes that you would need if you were going to just be an entrepreneur without the kind of corporate side of your background as well. To what extent would you say that being an entrepreneur plays into being private equity versus the corporate experience?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm not brave enough to be a gladiator like you guys, right? So a business owner, I think, is probably the hardest, it's not a job, but a profession to be in, because you have to get up in the morning and not know where that next paycheck is going to come from, right? So I think actually being a business owner and as a pure entrepreneur without that safeguard is much harder than, I think, private equity. I think private equity is for individuals who have an entrepreneurial spirit, like I have. My whole family have been entrepreneurs that also want to have the safeguards around business, and also a bunch of people who you can learn from. I do think there's a lot of learning you can do with a group mentality. I think private equity is great with that, because if, for example, when we decided to launch our technology part of our business in 2012, we had lots of mistakes that we had made in other sectors, which we knew that we could bring to our technology part. And so when we were growing Secure Data, which was our first real tech investment, that buy and build, buying other businesses, how to deal with integration, how to deal with cultural issues, how to retain staff. There's lots of transferable skills that came with other businesses. So, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably doing it by yourself. It's quite a lonely place as well. As a private equity professional, you're building businesses, but you also have people around you that you can learn from. The other thing is you're not day to day in the business. You're managing those businesses. You're in the boards once a month. You're understanding where to go, what's your strategic, next step. You're able to reflect on the business. You're supposed to be, on the business, not in the business. And I think there's a lot of skill in that, trying to be on the business, not in the business, because then you can think.
And, you talked about some of the mistakes along the way. I mean, what are some of the kind of mistakes? You don't have to go into too much detail if you're not allowed to for whatever reason, but that you've learned from, and how have they set you up for future success?
Yeah,
apart from getting expelled when you're 9 years old.
That was probably one of the best things that did happen to me actually back in the day. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned in private equity is when you're going for a rapid buy and build. RIT, for example, 11 businesses we acquired. The reason why we had handled that in a different way is because previously, when we had acquired that sort of level of acquisition, we didn't really focus on the cultural part of the business. You're inheriting a whole bunch of different cultures in different regions of the UK, and if they don't feel that they are loved, for example, if they haven't got their arms around them and say, look, this is the clear plan that we've got as a business. This is what it means for you. This is your terms and conditions, or employment manual as well, single employment manual, uniformity. People just want to know what the plan is. And if you're doing a very rapid buy and build, sometimes that cultural bit is not appreciated as much. So, and then what happens is people leave. You start getting toxic individuals and businesses. Then suddenly your customers feel that, and then suddenly that impacts your revenue and your EBITDA. So, I think that whole people bit is very, very important.
And I think what people could potentially say is that you sit in an office in London looking at just numbers isn't always going to help you find that cultural bit. So, what are some examples of how, if you're going to acquire different businesses, you would be able to build that culture and ensure that everyone plays on the same playbook?
Yeah, I think there's a misconception of how we were in Covent Garden on our calculators just looking at that. I mean, it's actually not that. I mean, we talk so much about everything all day, and we don't have offices because we're all in one open plan office, and we just bounce off each other. I mean, there's very, very smart individuals that around the table, and advisors and the rest of it. So we process everything. That's the first thing. I think the numbers are important, but actually numbers are probably about 10% of our time. It's all about strategy. For example, if a business wants to go outside of the UK into Northern Europe and wants to start their foray in Northern Europe, we will discuss, process, stratify, SWOT analysis that for weeks and weeks and weeks before we may decide no. And if we decide yes, then it's a very, very specific plan around that, investment around that, people around that, processes, what can go wrong. We're quite glass half empty. So we'll look at all the risks and think, what could go wrong? What has gone wrong in other situations that we've known within August? What has gone wrong in this sector? What are the curveballs coming around the corner? AI, ChatGPT, other things. And then how do we mitigate that? So we spend a lot of time on strategizing and then processing before we make a decision. That's where we spend most of the time. And then, if you work that out, then actually the numbers come from that.
So when you obviously take over a business, you're meeting a lot of founders. I'm assuming that you get times where founders come and pitch to you, and other times where you actually probably go and search for a business yourself and said, look, we want you. So what are the kind of common traits you find in successful versus less successful founders?
It's a great question. I mean, it's a long question as well, because it's a long answer. I mean, the best founders that I've seen and the best CEOs that I've seen have a clear why. They've got a clear why about what they want to do something, and they've chosen that market. And if you know the market yourself, they're going to know the market even better. So that's the first bit. So there's got a clear why they want to do something in that market. I think the other thing is that you can see the passion come through. They're not just doing this because they want to make a fast buck. They really want to make a change in, for example, cybersecurity. When we first backed Secure Data, the guy wanted to create the largest European managed security services provider, which he ended up doing. So there's that passion as well. And I think also EQ is very, very important. Everyone thinks that it's all about technical stuff. No, it's not. As a good leader, a good CEO, good management team, which is, the CEO is the main leader. You have to have really good EQ. Yeah, you have to really understand people, communicate to them really clearly, engender their trust as well. That's really, really important. And if I look back, those are people that we have had the best outcomes from. The most successful businesses and the best returns.
And have you got examples of entrepreneurs that you've probably invested in and you look back and think, I shouldn't have done that? Well, the numbers tell you why you shouldn't have done that. And what are some of the things that you've seen in them, like shortfalls that other people could learn from?
I think, of course, if you look back on a career of sort of 15 years in private equity, there is individuals that may not have made it. Could you have made those decisions earlier rather than later? Of course. I wouldn't have said in any of our situations we dealt with that in a inhumane way. You've got to also be respectful of people. People have got families and people have got futures, and everyone that certainly we have backed has gone on to do other things as well successfully. Being part of a private equity journey, whether it's beginning, middle, or end, is it's both lucrative and also very successful from a CV point of view. So, but yes, there are traits now that I've got, certainly in the last 10 years, of making those mistakes early, which I would say I can spot that. So we're not going to do that there. Or you have a frank conversation with someone before you do a deal and say, look, you're really good at this, but you're not going to be good at that.
Yeah.
Or at some stage in this journey, like we've done in many of our businesses, we say, look, first phase, get the business to a certain level, then actually we need somebody else at that level. And that's more the situation.
So more that somebody's skill set could be take them from 1 million to 10 million, and then someone else to take them who's got experience in taking a business from 10 million to 100 million.
It's a very, very different skill set, that first mile when you get to that 5 million EBITDA. Trying to get all the processes working, get the culture working, systems, all that type of stuff. There's a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of roll your sleeves up. After that, it then becomes more corporate and more automated, and you need a different individual for those larger businesses.
So what are the essential tools, or like a toolkit, non-negotiables that you say an entrepreneur needs to have?
Yeah, well, I think you have to have the guts. I think you've got to have a real clear, drive and passion that actually, and belief that you're going to do something. I think every entrepreneur believes that they can succeed. Certainly I've seen that. And this whole point about risk, for example, why am I not a business owner in the context of, my own business versus being in private equity, is because at that stage I wanted a paycheck, right? I wanted that paycheck at the end of the month. I think with an entrepreneur, they don't worry about that as much. I think they're a bit risk averse, but actually they don't need that. So I think that's the thing is, understanding and managing that risk. I think the passion thing we talked about, you have to have real passion. I think the ability to sell, because you're going to be selling, you're going to be opening doors. Yeah, you'll be knocking doors, and maybe you might even have a product, right? And you have to have a real good ability to that. And it all comes down to this EQ communication bit. Really.
And I think that's so important, and so many entrepreneurs actually miss that bit, that you can be the best, I'll give a plumber as an example, but the best plumber in the world. But if you don't know how to sell your services, you're always a plumber, not a business person. And a lot of people, I always talk about one of the best experiences I ever had was in between, I think, my undergraduate degree and my master's. I went and worked in a call center, and I got some like typical, hardcore Wolf of Wall Street sales training about how to deal with objections and how to talk to people on the phone who are just going to slam the phone down on you. And it's probably one of the best lessons I've ever had, because after that, having people say no to me, it wasn't a thing. And a lot of people have got like a great idea, a great skill, but they just don't know how to sell it. And just doing a little bit of basic sales training can go a long way. And just putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation where you have to even just go and knock on the door and someone say no to you. I think it can be so important.
I had exactly the same thing, actually. It was something called Kirby. Kirby was selling vacuum cleaners door to door.
I remember.
And I did that during sort of between 16 and 18. And I remember the leaflets came outside the sixth form that we had saying, "Oh, you're going to make 10 grand or something in 2 months." And I was like, shit, yes, let's go and do it. And then I remember going there in Colindale, speaking on the phone call and trying to close people. I had a script over there. 10 people probably said no, and one person said yes. And then I got the appointment. Then when you get the appointment, you got to sell them a £2,000 vacuum cleaner in 1996.
And who the fuck wants a £2,000 vacuum cleaner?
Well, exactly. And I think I sold one in 2 months, and I didn't make anything.
Yeah.
So that was but what I learned was when I was knocking on the door and I was trying to get leads to get their number, and then doing that. I mean, the relationship, the sales, you've got to be on it within a few seconds. You build that rapport within a few seconds with hundreds of individuals for a few months, and then you go in and try and sell that Kirby. Now, if I look back on it now, I probably would have sold a few more than I did.
But it's a great life lesson, isn't it?
It's great, yeah.
And I'd definitely recommend more people go and do it. And selling doesn't have to necessarily be how I mentioned before, the Wolf of Wall Street kind of culture. These days, selling is very much about that doctor-patient relationship. They come to you with like an illness, and you go to them with a solution, the magic pill, and you just talk them through that. And I think that's what selling has become more and more of, because people are used to people just texting them, WhatsApping them with deals, emailing with the deals, and attention span nowadays is so small that you really have to capture someone's imagination to be able to sell to them.
I think it depends what your product is, because we've got so much information now, even with just ChatGPT, that gives you the answer, and now people can explore and research themselves. So a lot of the time it's just, I want something, let me just go and buy it. When it comes to a product, selling needs to be so quick, within seconds actually now, right? I think it's 20 seconds, the span of anyone now. If you can't sell them within that 20 second, then you're probably not going to get them. They're probably going to swipe right or whatever it is in Insta or the other TikTok, and that's how you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And everyone's becoming more impatient, and probably getting more ADHD at the moment.
Probably. And how are you thinking about AI? One of the things that's been like really interesting for me, actually, just seeing this, even the last 3 months, is that originally when people started talking about AI 2-3 years ago, they talked a lot about how it would affect blue collar jobs, that people working in factories would lose their jobs, people working in, even like lorry drivers and so on. But it's actually the opposite way around. It's actually people in white collar jobs, creative industries, copywriters, even I think in the future web designers who might struggle a little bit more with AI and the evolution.
For sure. I mean, but the thing is that the world has changed so many times, Industrial Revolution and when the World Wide Web came through, and even before that, even computers and stuff like that. So there's always going to be change. That's the only thing that you can be confirmed about. There will be change, but we just deal with it, right? We just deal with it. And so, there will be some occupations which will be obsolete overnight. I think it's really, really important that for us in our businesses, we see how we can use AI as well. How can you power AI now to help you with better outcomes in a question that you would normally have? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is try and work out if it is going to be obsolete. So it's going to make one of your parts of your business obsolete. Then do something else with that. Just try and find a way to either use AI to power it, or decide to do something else. You might need to close it down if it's an admin part of your business, or it's web marketing, or some form of a lot of employees now use ChatGPT to reply back to employers.
Oh, right.
About disputes and the rest of it, quite interestingly. So, it helps those people. So it's still too early to work out how it's going to impact everything in our business. But the starting point is just do the work to go and find out how it's going to impact.
So what are the trends you're seeing in businesses at the moment, and how they're using it to their advantage?
So, a lot of pitches now can start from basically ChatGPT, right? You can start off with that. Also, if you want to research somebody, if they're your customer or if they're business, you don't have to spend, tens and tens of minutes finding out. Within a minute, you can find out everything about a specific customer in a nicely packaged way. It has been a bit inaccurate in the last few months. It's getting a bit better with ChatGPT 4. Other things that we're doing, in a bit more higher tech a version of it in our cyber business. We've got an algorithm that helps us understand which customers are going to have an attack or not. So we can use AI to focus down on those clients which have, different aspects which will be more susceptible to a threat. So, we've used it there. And I'm sure in our IT support business, Air IT, we'll use it to automate a lot of our common issues that we get from our line 1, line 2 support. We're doing that right now to help reduce costs, but also increase efficiency. But we're right at the start of this. Yeah. So, I still think we need a good 12 months to see how it's going to continue.
How are you using AI in your personal life just to help you navigate?
Do you know what I like? Holidays. Where am I going to go when I go to, San Sebastian? Or, where am I going to go when Middle East? I was on a fundraising trip recently. Where should I go for restaurants or, hotels? So I use it a bit like that. And, you can use the voice dictation. So that works pretty well.
But how does that help you versus, say, Google?
You can use Google. I find that with ChatGPT, it's all packaged up in a nicer way.
Yeah.
That's all it is really, isn't it? Because with Google, you've got to go into different links and then you've got to find out which link it is. Actually, with ChatGPT, you've got 7 or 8 links which are just summarized in one page. So I need to use it more, to be honest.
I think one of the things I used it for, like travel again, was me and the missus when I went to Verona and I did 2 versions. So I got a ChatGPT version. I said, don't send me to all the like ultra touristy places, but tell me to go to the like must goes. And then I got I hired someone off Upwork to write me, who lived in Verona, a personal itinerary, and it was actually quite similar.
Yeah.
And that was quite enlightening.
Well, exactly.
So it tells you that it is just going to get better as well.
And it's the quality of your question as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I found. You've been really specific.
Oh, definitely. You can't just say, tell me all the best things to do in Verona.
Yeah.
Because it will just send you out the same blurb that like Google will give you the best SEO ranked stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to say things like, tell me like a really, quirky place that I can go to that isn't too touristy, and, those kind of questions would be a lot better. So what are you saying to young people now navigating a career path about the types of careers that you would recommend them, or the types of areas that they should invest their skill set in, given the fact that we are going down this AI revolution?
AI generative. The thing is, I always start off with, and if I'm talking to my son now, who's 10 years old, I would say, what are you good at and what do you like doing? Those are 2 things. What are you good at and what do you like doing? So what are you good at? If you're not numerate, he's pretty numerate, so he's going to go down that route. If he's not doing it, don't go into a business type situation where you need to use your numbers. You can still be in business, but don't go into accountancy, or don't go into trading, or don't go into, mergers and acquisitions, investment banking like Dad did. So that's the first bit. Then also, do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be in that sort of healthcare route? So just try and work out, if you're not interested in the whole healthcare route, then just say no to that. So work out what you're good at. Do you like team working? Do you not like team working? Are you a leader? Are you not a leader? And sometimes they don't know at that age, right? Because they're quite young. And I know schools are trying to force them into, early examinations assessment to make them feel, you know yourself at 11. They really don't. But when we're talking about this, about 16, 18, 21, when you make those decisions, find out what you really like, and then go into an area which interests you. Like, for example, you're interested in, events and sports and the rest of it. That's great. Okay. I love business. I can't think of a better occupation for me. Business, I love it. And I love the skills I have actually lend itself to that area. So that's the starting point. Then ask yourself this question: is where I want to go down, is that going to be affected by generative AI and do the work? If I ask ChatGPT, am I going to be obsolete in a few years because of what you're going to end up being? And just work out. So if you're going to be an admin assistant or legal paralegal, right, or legal assistant, or even if I say sort of secretary or PAs, which are specifically focused on calendars and things like that, then I'd say, okay, what else can you do to make sure that your value is more than just an automated bot, basically? So that's what I would do, because we don't know what's going to happen. And by the time my son is 18, or when he's trying to decide what he wants to do, it's all going to change, right? But he'll know what he really likes, and he'll know what his skills are, and then he can work out what's going to happen with the whole AI drive. And also, I would say the other thing is be quite diverse. Don't be really niche. So don't become very specific into one area, but you can't then row back from.
And, honestly, I just think it's so difficult now because of where we thought AI would go versus where it has gone. In the past, I would have told people, make sure you've got a super creative mind.
Yeah.
Because if you're creative, then, no computer is going to be able to take over your job. But we're finding out that AI can actually come up with some great art. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very difficult to know. Whereas at the same time, if you're super technical, even if you are a great lawyer, you could get ChatGPT to write you a bloody good letter to somebody you want to do some litigation against.
Yeah. So then
that is the difficult thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So then what I would say in that instance is, people still want to buy from people, right? And I bet you even in 10 years' time, whilst it'll be like the Encyclopedia Britannica, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Encyclopedia Britannica.
I was going to go for a job selling encyclopedias as well. Honestly, door to door, yeah.
You forget that. But we had all the Encyclopedia Britannica, and then we would just research ourselves, anything we wanted. And then that all went, didn't it? That all went, didn't it? So now it's all on Google. So what's going to happen with the legal industry is you're going to have all of the legal stuff on a portal, and then you have someone that can explain that to, like an advisor. The CEO, management team will still want to talk to somebody about strategy, about the way to deal with a specific area. So that's where I would focus on time. Business advice, general business advice, because that's quite difficult for a AI to do. Certainly at the moment, it may get there as well, but you're going to have a portion of people that still want to deal with people. The other thing is, obviously, if you're going to be a hairdresser, or if you're going to be a dentist, or if you're going to be a dermatologist or a surgeon, then unless we decide that we're going to have robots which do all that stuff, that's probably a long way away. So you can always focus on those areas.
Yes, I think what we're getting out of this is focus on your interpersonal skills. This one-on-one conversation that actually we're losing a little bit of, especially since COVID. We're not having those interactions and meetings. I think about the amount I used to go and do face-to-face networking before COVID. It was religiously once a week. I was part of a networking group. But now I don't, because I don't feel I have to, because I feel like I can just get on Zoom and have those conversations. Whereas there could be even younger people who don't even have those face-to-face conversations online. It could just be through some kind of instant messaging or whatever that may be. So I think just getting back out there and having those interpersonal conversations, because like you said earlier, people buy from people.
People buy from people. This is just the thing. It'll always be the case where individuals have an interest and they have some skills, don't they? And we just have to fit ourselves into this new world. Every time something like this happens, even when the World Wide Web came and also computers came, everyone thought it was the death of so many things. Yes, things will die. Occupations will die. But it'll take some time. And that's the great thing about, humans, is that we've got resilience and we evolve. That's for sure, isn't it? So I'm excited about finding out what the future is.
Where are you on the whole thing about us becoming half cyborg, half human?
It could be quite interesting, wouldn't it? No, I mean, I've done a bit of research on this, and they think that Terminator 2 Judgment Day could come pretty soon. Theoretically, it could, but you've got to remember that there's got to be enough automation in the world for robots to have, take over. And if you do any research on it, that you can tell that is very, very, very unlikely.
I think just going back to what you said, human evolution is about change, and we have to accept with anything like this, a paradigm shift in technology, that there's going to be an upside, and there will unfortunately be a downside as well. But ultimately, the way that humans are, there'll always be a bigger upside, I feel. So I think that's what we just need to focus on. The AI is here. It's here to stay. Yeah. It's going to get better. It's going to take more jobs, but it will create a whole bunch of jobs as well.
100%. People are worried about the unknown, right? That's a natural human instinct. And, we've just got to remember, not completely forget, but let's not spend all of our time thinking about why it's not good. Let's think about why it is good and why it will be able to help us. Because that is the ultimate outcome, isn't it?
Definitely.
Focus on the half full at this time.
Let's think about like your life now versus what it was 20 years ago. How do you prioritize your day to focus on high value, high priority stuff?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. That's where I learned that, actually, funny enough. I think I've got 4 pillars that I think about life: is family, health, mental, physical, and spiritual. And then you've got career, and then you've got giving back, and kind of hobbies in that last area. And it's fair to say, the last 17 of the last 22 years of working, I've spent probably more time on the work bit. And I have neglected family and other things during that time, which, looking back on it, I'm making a shift now. Yeah. And so, I'm lucky to be a partner and a senior partner in August. So I'm able to have that work-life balance as well as deliver for our business. So, I'm able to work from home the odd day, and we're allowed to go on holidays and be with the kids. Certainly on Saturday, it's sacrosanct. I do all the ferrying. I'm sure all the other dads do on the Saturday, taking them from one place to another. You're a taxi driver, aren't you? And I enjoy that. I really enjoy that. I couldn't do that, 5 years ago, because I was just so busy with stuff. So in order to do that, I need to prioritize in my day. I use something called chunking. It took me years to find this out. And my calendar is focused not on just meetings, it's also on to-do things. And it could even be administrative things that I need to do personally. But my whole day is focused on having half an hour to do, a business pitch, for example. It could be half an hour to review a model. It could be also, but I know now how to get into that dot right of priority, highly critical and also timely. And so I make sure I do it. And I do that every night. So before I go to bed, whenever it is, or if it's on the train back, I prioritize my day so that I know by Saturday I can switch off to a certain extent. You can't really switch off completely in private equity. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job, but I can switch off much more than I used to. The odd occasion I need to work, the weekend. But yeah, it's a discipline there. And it took me ages to get there.
So how do you deal with the low value, low impact stuff then? Because it still needs to be done.
It needs to be done. Usually that's the Saturday afternoon, or it's the waiting until my daughter's in her Indian dance class, which I'll just look at the low priority. Low priority is usually to do with me. It's like, where am I going to invest private funds somewhere? Or I don't
necessarily think that is low priority though, is it?
Well, it's less priority than the day job or stuff that I need to do with the kids. So
yeah, but then again, it depends on how you're balancing your life. So one of the things that I got from that was that your work is still a big priority to you. Your kids are a huge priority to you, but you're thinking a little bit less about your own personal achievements
Maybe,
as well?
yeah. I mean, I work up pretty early, so I've got a PT who allows himself in. He's got all of the codes and whatever to open the door and he's in my gym at 6:30 in the morning, ready to go.
Did you get you out of bed as well?
Get me out of bed as well, yeah. So I'm there for an hour with him.
Every day?
4 times a week, sorry.
Wow, that's
4
good.
times a week. I've got to do it in the morning. If I don't do it in the morning, then I won't be able to do, at night. Cycling as well once a week. Haven't done it recently, but I'm doing that once a week. Football once a week as well, on Wednesday afternoon, evening. So that health-wise, that does that. I've got to check in every morning for myself, so that's more my mental health. I've got to check in for between 10 and 15 minutes just to see what's going on, if there's something that's arose which I need to deal with that day. So I try to declutter before I go to my day job. Sometimes I try to get up early, and a few years ago, pre-COVID, I was getting up at like 5 o'clock, 5:30. A lot of my friends were getting up with me as well, and we were doing it all together. But I just got really tired by the end of the day, so I couldn't make that work. But 6:30 for me that's my starting day. I get my meditation done after I do my exercise, and then I'm ready for the day.
And how are you finding the practice of meditation?
It's hard. It's really hard and we've got different ways of meditating. For me, it's I spend 15 minutes working out what's going on in my heart, in my intellect, and just working out if I'm worried about something which I'm not allowing myself to, I suppose, deal with. Okay. And it normally comes in that 15 minutes. Then once I've done that and I've dealt with it, I've decided this is what I'm going to do with it today, then it starts getting a bit quieter. And then the last 5 minutes, I'm not being able to do it more than 5 minutes. So I need some coaching for that. But then I just switch off. I switch off 5 minutes, and maybe out of those 5 minutes, it might be switching off for 30 seconds. It might be a minute. It might be 2-3 minutes, looking at candle. I find it really, really peaceful, because then you almost reset and then you're ready. And actually the days I don't end up having that, even if it's 2 or 3 seconds, I don't feel quite right, interestingly. So I need to do it. I just carry on. I got to do it before I leave, basically.
And I think it's just creating that small habit, isn't it? It doesn't have to be 15 minutes. Like you said, those 2 seconds looking at a candle is what resets you. It's not necessarily the whole thing. So just having that daily habit of, ensuring that you do it is probably more important than the actual 15 minutes itself.
You do it as well, don't you?
I've tried. I've been someone who's like gone in and out of meditation. Like I'll have, I'll use the Headspace app. I'll try and do my 10 minutes, and I'll always sit there while that timer's on. But I haven't found that space yet where I've been able to think this is what I need every single day, because I don't think I've had that habit transformation feeling from within by doing it. But, at the moment, my thing is an ice bath in the morning. Like, it's not an ice bath at the moment. It's probably about 8 degrees.
The Wim Hof.
But yeah, just going in for 3 minutes, saying that is the hard thing that I'm going to do this morning. So before I came to London today, I got in, it was cold, it was raining a little bit outside, it was a little bit dark, I didn't really want to do it. The kids are having breakfast, and it's nice and warm inside. But once I'd done it, it took me a little bit of time to warm up, but I just felt, all right, I've done that now, and I can do anything else today.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think also, with our sorts of lives where there's lots of things happening, you're not going to work and doing one specific thing, coming back. Stuff happens during that day, and it's amazing. When I started doing this in 2018, how much I didn't know I was going on in my subconscious, which I wasn't allowed to sort of declutter, which then showed up in other things with not being healthy to myself, basically. So certainly, I think for especially men who don't want to talk about stuff that's going on, it's really important to have that 10 to 15 minutes. If you don't have that, my personal view is you don't have a life, really, because how can you process things that happen during the day?
No, for sure. And how do you navigate being present, especially for your kids?
Again, I can do better, but I think it's switching off your phone, isn't it? I mean, that's the key thing. They, a number of times in the past, have said, you're always on your phone. And if it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock on a weekday, then I will still be kind of not present. But actually, if it's food, or if we go for dinner somewhere, or if it's on a holiday, I try and put my phone down. Yeah. It's really, really important.
And I don't think it can always just be like, people overcomplicate this notion of being present as well. Being present doesn't have to mean you're there just having a deep discussion with them. It can be like at dinner time, or it can be just taking them for a walk and just enjoying that period of time. It can be, even just transporting them somewhere, being that taxi service.
Yeah.
That's part of being present as well. Like my kids have got this thing that one of them has to sit in the front, the two older girls, and they've got their own little playlist on my Spotify. Then they'll argue about who's going to be playing what song at what point. And that, for me, it's those little things that I think are part of being present as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's developing that connection, isn't it, with the little ones, and we've got the ability to do it. When my parents were younger, they were so busy that they couldn't do that. And a lot of time I was with my grandparents and that. But I've had to learn how to be a dad which is present, because it's very different to when my parents were much younger. And certainly I think we can always do better.
In the last sort of few years, have you changed what your definition of success is in life?
Yes, definitely. I mean, when I was growing up, and you got to think about the background of the black sheep of the family. I always thought it was to be successful I think it's more of an Indian community thing. Financially, you've got to be successful. You've got to make money.
An immigrant story, basically.
Pardon?
An immigrant story.
An immigrant story. They were ex-Ugandans, right? They were ex-Ugandans with nothing, and it's amazing what they've done and the resilience they've had. But it was all driven by sort of wealth development. And then when you get to a position where you're secure, then actually is this what it is? Is this what it's all about? And I've done a lot of, as I've done a lot of coaching for myself. I've done been to a lot of self-development things and reading constantly since 2015. And ultimately it comes down to the basic things are you've got to have a good relationship with your family and friends. Okay, that's basic. Be a good individual. But it's two things for me now, which is going to decide how much good I do in these two areas is growth. Find areas of growth for myself. That's whether it's with family, my kids. Whether it's with friends and things that we're doing, or is it skills at work or building these businesses? It's that growth aspect of it, right? And I think the thing that I'm spending a lot more time in is charity. Okay, so charity, contribution, giving back, but not just giving and donating money to companies, helping them with their fundraising and understanding how can we do it? Spending time with one of the things that I'm involved in is helping 16 to 18-year-old kids who can't buy a calculator with basic essential skills like interview skills and assessment skills and career advice. And we're doing that in East London. Spending time with them on days, trying to develop their experience and their knowledge about it. So it's the time aspect. I love that sort of stuff. I love that sort of stuff. And so success for me now is we've kind of made the base, okay, and that's through hard work. Now it's about contribution and then just finding areas to grow, really.
I think it is really important to have that. But what would you? Is there anything you would say to young Mickey now, like as somebody who's been successful in your career? Would there be some things that you would have done differently as you went through that career? Or did you do all the right things, like spend a lot of time working hard, spend a lot of time making the right connections, spend a lot of time playing the corporate game as well? Yeah,
I mean, when I look back, I mean, everything that I've done has given me a lot of experience to get to, where I am today. And, even the failures and the mistakes and all the rest of it, it's been there for a reason, really. I would have probably tried to balance myself a bit more in terms of family versus work, working weekends and evenings and early mornings regularly. There's a certain, the new snowflake or, Generation X guys that are coming in now in their 20s, they want work-life balance. And when I see some of these guys in our businesses, I couldn't understand it pre-COVID, but actually post-COVID, I understand why you need that work-life balance. So if I look back on young Mickey, I would have said, look, work hard, but also, don't forget about your health, because I only started really training in my early 30s, and then also, think about your mental and spiritual health as well, because that would have really help with not having to work so hard. Maybe you can work smarter as well. Yeah.
No, definitely. I think, you don't want to get to an age like you're in your late 30s, 40s, where you realise, you can't walk up the bloody stairs.
No, exactly.
There's no point in having that money in your account if you can't, get into that car that you wanted to get.
Yeah.
So it's really important to focus on that.
Yeah.
And just creating those habits, how we spoke about before, like, even if it is just once a week, going for a run with your friends, and spending the time with other people, like your loved ones, because otherwise it just flies by, and then before you know it, you've lost those relationships as well.
No, for sure. I think, to be fair, the decluttering we talked about this, the decluttering that I do in the morning, the mental health and the spiritual stuff that I've spent time with has helped me more than any of the training stuff that I've done for work and others, in terms of my overall mental health.
So what would you say you've seen the common pitfalls that people face when it comes to balancing their work with their personal lives and success overall as a person?
I think people have, get into situations where they don't like what they do. There's a lot of people that I know hate getting up in the morning, but they do it because it's this. I think, again, it's quite focused on the Indian culture around sort of wealth generation, and they do it because they want to make money. And I'm fortunate to be in a situation. I love what I do right now, and it pulls me to get up in the morning rather than pushes. And so I would say, if you're feeling like that, if you're feeling like, I don't like my job, I'm not talking about the aspects around it. That you're always going to have an individual who you don't get on with, or the odd day is going to be a bit shit. But if you genuinely don't like your job and you're doing it because of other reasons, you should change it, because life's too short, right? And it's going to affect different parts of your psyche. It's going to affect your relationships, it's going to affect the way you feel. That could show up in too much eating, or other things which you won't be able to manage. So try and get into a situation that you love that job, you love that industry, and also it really hones your skills.
How would you advise someone who's at a similar age to us, like late 30s, early 40s, who's sort of getting towards the peak of their careers, who doesn't like their job, but they're almost institutionalized as well with that career that they've chosen? And would you say to them, just basically fuck it and just go and do something else that you enjoy? But it's not that easy to go and find something you enjoy, especially when, like we've spoken about it today, you've got that regular paycheck.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's idiosyncratic. Every situation is different. So I'm not going to suggest that everyone, quits their job. You must, if you're going to quit your job, you must have, especially if you've got a security issue, so you're worried about, where the paycheck, you must have another job to go to. Don't just quit and then say, okay, fuck it, I'll find something in 6 months, especially in the current market with macroeconomic background as it is. What I would say is this, though, is you can always, I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, I've seen lots of individuals change their occupations, like really within a few months. I've seen it already. And so everyone says that I'm done by 40. No, it's bullshit. You can be an advisor, for example. At 40, you've got a lot of experience. You can be an advisor. You can be a freelance advisor to businesses. And they love that. I don't know what your sector is, but if it's in a certain industry sector, healthcare, for example, you don't like being a GP, as I've seen a lot of my friends actually who are GPs are finding it tough, become a consultant. Actually make more money, do less work. Or in pharmacy, why do you have a lot of locums? They don't want to do the pharmacy day-to-day 9-to-5 job or run a pharmacy. They want to make more money with less hours. So there's always an opportunity to think about a better situation for yourself. I would at least ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? I was listening to Mark Andreessen, one of the PayPal mafia.
Yeah.
He was actually talking about ChatGPT, and he's got a kid who's like 7-8 years old, and he said, you know what's going to happen by the time our kids are like 18 years old, say 10 years time, ChatGPT will actually be like their life coach.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's mad, isn't it? Just to think like that.
That is a worrying thing, isn't it? Because I suppose they love having knowledge through not an individual, but for a
But it would have had so much experience with all the commands that person has delivered to it over the years that it will know more about that child, and even like unfortunately the parents might know, and that's it's crazy. How are you thinking about freedom? How do you define freedom now for yourself?
So freedom for me is the ability to decide what you want to do each day. And I'm fortunate at the moment, where I'm at in my career, I'm able to do that, to a certain extent. Unless something comes up, I can basically decide when I want to take holidays and how I want to work. And I think that's why a lot of people end up going into businesses, right? Because they want that freedom. A lot of my friends and people I've invested in say they don't want to have a boss, and they want to decide when they want to get up, go to sleep, go to holiday, where they want to even have their employment. Do they want to have it abroad? Do they want to have it here? So I think freedom is depending on what sort of situation you have created. I didn't have freedom earlier in my career. Corporate, PwC was tough. I had to try and get holidays here and there because deals would happen all the time, and it would be quite difficult to manage that. But it's generally, as senior, you get more freedom, you get more power to be able to decide your future.
And just kind of wrapping this up, I've got two more questions. What kind of traits would you say, or what kind of people would you advise to go down the corporate path rather than an entrepreneurial path, and vice versa?
You're talking about people, a business owner, yeah?
Either being a business owner or going down that whole PwC, climb the ladder path.
I think it's always good to start off in a corporate background, to be honest. I mean, I've always thought that. Even if you have your own business idea, I think it's always good to learn on someone else's watch and with someone else's security in a safe environment. If you're fundamentally unemployable, like Zuckerberg or something, then I would say make sure you have a very, very clear plan. Try and set up for success. So see if your parents, bank of mum and dad, or a grant, or your savings can help you get to at least a 2-year period. And if it's not 2 years, at least 18 months to give you some real runway to make it happen. And I think if you're a business owner, you'll know if you're employable or not. If you're employable and you want to be a business owner, I'd say start in the corporate side, get to know a bit about life, and then go and do the other thing. Why not?
And just finally, like any other advice you want to give to young people about life, mastery, or
I think
success?
I think if I look back, just those two things I talked about, just don't get yourself into a situation where you're not in a job where you love the job and it hones your own skills, because fundamentally you won't like it at some stage. So that's the first thing. So really know yourself well. And I think the second thing is don't focus on the wealth development, making money. I think focus on what you really love, and at some stage in your career you'll have an opportunity, whether it's your own business, whether it's being part of the senior management team, getting equity. You'll get that opportunity, but just enjoy it. Let's have fun.
Enjoy the ride, man.
Enjoy the ride. Yeah,
let's leave it on that note. Thanks,
Cheers,
Mickey.
mate.
Enjoyed that. Cheers, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Life Mastery. To hear more about our podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is my name, Gurmej Singh Pawar, Meji Media, or follow my Instagram page, which is events_Gurmej. And we also have a website, which is www.mejimedia.com. And all other ways to follow us will be available in the show notes, including TikTok, X, LinkedIn, and all the rest of it. Thanks again for listening, and speak to you soon.